Hello, everyone. It's time once again to do that thing we do. Welcome to this week's edition of The Greatest Record Ever Made. I'm Carl Caffarelli, the co-host of This Is Rock and Roll Radio with Dana and Carl, heard every Sunday night from 9 to midnight, right here in Syracuse on Spark, WSPJ 103.3 and 93.7 FM, and on the web at sparksyracuse.org. I am also a writer, and I've been working on a book called The Greatest Record Ever Made, Volume 1, dedicated to the notion that an infinite number of songs can each be the greatest record ever made as long as they take turns, which is what records do. This week's greatest record ever made spotlight falls upon That Thing You Do, the title theme from what is actually my all-time favorite movie. I love that movie beyond all others, even more than A Hard Day's Night and It's a Wonderful Life, which had always been my favorites for decades prior to that, more so than Marx Brothers movies and Humphrey Bogart movies and What's Up Doc with Ryan O'Neal and Barbra Streisand. That Thing You Do is a film that if it's on TV and I stumble across it, I'm going to stop and watch it again. I think I had a VHS copy of it. I had a DVD copy of it. I had the Blu-ray, which is expanded. It includes both a theatrical release and an expanded director's cut with a slightly different ending and additional backstory. And I have the t-shirt. I don't have the book because there is no book. I would buy a paperback novelization of That Thing You Do in a heartbeat. I would buy a making of book. People, producers of this stuff, take my money already. This piece was originally written about a year ago as the world bid farewell to the late Adam Schlesinger, whom we lost due to COVID-19 in 2020. The piece has only been slightly updated for the book, and I'm going to read you the chapter as it will appear in the book when the book appears. The Wonders, That Thing You Do, written by Adam Schlesinger, produced by Adam Schlesinger and Mike Viola, from the soundtrack album That Thing You Do, Playtone Epic Records, 1996. Singer, songwriter, musician, and producer Adam Schlesinger was born on October 31st of 1967. He was too young to really remember the 1960s, on the scene too late to experience Beatlemania, the British invasion, the debut of the Monkees, the effervescent zeitgeist of a pop music revolution that encompassed Motown, the Dave Clark Five, Paul Revere and the Raiders, Leslie Gore, the Knickerbockers, girl groups, surf groups, and James Brown on the Tammy Show. He did not grow up watching Shindig and Hullabaloo on TV. He would have only seen Batman and Star Trek in syndicated reruns. He wasn't yet 2 years old when Neil Armstrong declared one small step for a man was one giant leap for mankind. He lived the first years of his life in the 60s, but he could not possibly have retained any substantive memories of that defining decade. And yet, somehow Adam Schlesinger served the best pop legacies of the 60s with greater grace and verve than anyone else you could name. He did it the only way a creative soul knows how to do it, instinctively, intuitively, artfully. He didn't experience the wonders of the 60s firsthand, but when one of his projects called for it, he could conjure an effective flash of period verisimilitude untainted by mere nostalgia or bloodless hucksterism. It was just that thing he did. All of the above kind of sidesteps what most would consider Schlesinger's greater body of work, with his groups Ivy and Fountains of Wayne, and also the bulk of his voluminous film and television songwriting and production credits, from There's Something About Mary through Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. I can't even apologize for my tunnel vision in that regard, because Schlesinger was essential to two 60s-related gems that have meant the world to me. In 2016, he produced the Monkees' triumphant Good Times album, a highlight in an otherwise miserable year, a year that robbed us of Prince and David Bowie, among others, and exchanged them all for the awful reality of a president-elect Trump. And in 1996, he channeled everything I loved about the 60s into a magic, frothy concoction that served as the title theme for my favorite movie, That Thing You Do. Well, I've heard your record, guy, and I like it. I like it a lot. That Thing You Do, it's snappy. Actor Tom Hanks made his directorial debut with this lighthearted little romantic comedy about the Wonders, formerly the Wonders, an unknown Erie, Pennsylvania rock and roll group that manages to score a big hit single in 1964. These fictional one-hit wonders are a quartet of archetypes: the talent, the fool, the smart one, and the bass player. But the film executes the difficult task of making them seem plausible, real. There's a scene when the members of the Wonders all hear their song, That Thing You Do, on the radio for the first time. And that scene precisely nails the giddy rush of rock and pop music better than any other slip of celluloid I've ever seen. Yeah, even better than the entirety of A Hard Day's Night, which had been my all-time favorite film right up until that night at a movie theater in Cicero, New York in 1996, when my eyes and ears opened wide with glee at Hollywood's best ever love letter to rock and roll music. And none of it would have or could have worked without the perfect song. Adam Schlesinger provided that perfect song. Mike Viola of the Candy Butchers co-produced and sang lead. Some say Viola also co-wrote the song, but declined to take a songwriting credit, while others say that is not so. It is indisputable that the combined talents of Schlesinger and Viola crafted a stunning confection that steers clear of the quagmire of pastiche or parody and captures the essence of Fab and Gear, Radio Ready, 1964. Schlesinger's legacy is greater than one perfect song he built for a movie, and more than a fantastic album he made with the surviving members of the Monkees. As the world reeled with the news of Schlesinger's death from COVID-19 in 2020, many of my eloquent friends in the pop music community spoke on behalf of Fountains of Wayne, of Ivy, of Tinted Windows. There were testimonials to Schlesinger from many who met him, many who worked with him, many who felt this sudden loss, as we all heard and tried to process that awful news. Adam Schlesinger was 52 years old, too young to have remembered the 60s, too young to be eulogized, too young, for God's sakes, too young. Our sense of loss as fans pales beside the losses of his family and friends, his children. We can only reflect upon what his music meant to us and mourn from afar. I mourn with something snappy. Something I heard in a movie more than 2 decades ago, a movie which took place within a cherished era 3 decades before that. Adam Schlesinger couldn't have remembered that era, but he captured it. And I'll always remember him for that thing he did. Rest in peace, Spartacus. Thank you for joining me this week for the greatest record ever made. Below, you will see options to subscribe, to support, and to tip. I will also post a link to the published version of this piece as it ran last year on my blog, Boppin' Like the Hip Folks Do. Thank you for joining me, and I hope we'll see you next week for the greatest record ever made.